Greetings, and welcome to Badgerpod Nerdcast numero 38, Pinky and the Wall. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I'm joined by our lovely hosts. We will pass the potato quickly around and get intros because we want to get to this trippy and awesome topic. I am Brian, the host of the Nerdcast and the Gamergate Show. I am also a comic artist and the creator of Good Guy Comics, goodguycomics.com. And that's the long and the short of it. So I will pass the potato to Mike.
I have the potato. I have the potato. I'm Dr.
I have the potato.
No, I have the potato. And I'm doing things with it as we speak. I'm still Dr. Random McCam, and I rant sillily at people, and for some reason they understand it. When I do animations that nobody understands, I'm going to pass the potato to Hannah. Hannah, take the potato.
I have a potato, and the mute button actually worked for me today. That's definitely the signal we need to make French fries out of this potato. It doesn't have to make sense. Just go with it. But I'm Hannah Wallen, and I write stuff all the time and publish it everywhere. I'm omni-writer-itent or whatever. And I will pass the potato on to Rachel.
Thank you, Hannah. Hi, I'm Rachel Edwards, and I write things and I thing the things on Thursdays usually. And you can find more of the things that I thinged on naughtynerdist.tumblr.com, and I will take this potato and make it into mashed potatoes. But before that happens, I will hand it off to Allison, I guess, unless she's not talking. Is she talking today?
Allison is having trouble.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah. Back to you, Brian. Sorry.
He's not here. No, it's okay. It's okay.
For some reason, whenever I see your thingy, I think that you're Allison. It's sorry. I forget. Like usually, I associate you with the Doge. That's just.
I usually associate me with the Doge as well. But unfortunately, fortunately, I'm the Badger head, which is a higher honor, I think. But
yeah.
All right.
Someone's got that tattooed on their arm. I've seen the
Yes,
picture.
I know. They put it into their flesh.
We've actually scarred someone, you guys. It just got real. Oh.
I know, right?
Yes.
But at least it was an attractive one.
The mark of the beast.
Pretty nice tattoo.
He's got the mark of the beast.
It was pretty
on
cute,
him
actually.
Forever. All right. So as I try to get Allison into the show, in the meantime, I'm going to. Well, we're going to get right into the topic. So we're going to be talking about Pink Floyd's The Wall, and I'm going to give the floor to Mike to do the reading.
Give me that floor.
You has floor.
Oh, and Allison's here. Hooray.
So
just in time.
I guess we'll introduce Allison real quick. Allison.
Hey, this is Allison. She does reviews. Hey, Allison, talk about your review thing and other things that you do.
Damn it.
Oh, no.
I guess she can't talk. All right, well, we'll keep trying. We'll figure it out. Meanwhile, Mike, Allison does do reviews, guys. They're going to be awesome. They're already awesome. I'll try to get her in. And Mike, go ahead and do the reading for Pink Floyd, please.
Okay, right. Yeah, we wanted to talk about music on the Nerdcast, but
I can talk now.
Okay. Excellent, Allison. That's an excellent time to start talking, isn't it? Right.
Oh yes. Oh, so well, it was the most trollish time, so that's.
Well, you might as well introduce yourself now, then, mightn't you? Go on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you talked about me doing reviews and doing reviews. People seem to like them. I get annoyed during them, and they really like that. And yeah, you can find them on our channel, Honey Badger Radio, I believe, and YouTube. Just do a search on it for YouTube and. I've been doing Halt and Catch Fire, although I'm supposed to not say that title because everybody's like, I'm tired of listening to you talk about that show. So, but anyway, that's my first review series. And then after that, I'll do whatever you guys send me, including stuff that annoys the crap out of me. You'll get to see me annoyed more and stuff. And I'm sure that Mike is annoyed by me now, so I'll just...
Well, I'm of the understanding that people quite enjoy it when I get annoyed as well.
Yes. Perhaps one day we should get annoyed together.
I swear to God, we're like one case away from a Badger orgy.
Where's the orgy coming?
Well, it's an orgy of rage.
Hey,
Yeah,
it doesn't
it's
it doesn't have to be a sexual
ragey.
orgy. It just needs to. I mean, never mind.
Okay, shh. It's an orgy of annoyance. An orgy.
Yes, yes.
Annoy orgy.
An orgy.
An orgy. Okay, I apologize, Mike. Please go ahead with what
This
you
has
were
been
saying.
a highly productive discussion, I think. So, the wall. Like I say, we wanted to talk about music, on the Nerdcast in some form or other, but since we're nerds who like to pick at the intricate details of sort of characterization and storytelling, not many opportunities present themselves in music. Contemporary music, especially pop music, tends to be driven not by characters and storytelling, but by charisma and scene setting. It doesn't build worlds, it builds philosophies. But there are exceptions, and one of them is The Wall. The Wall is not just a double studio album, it was also a highly elaborate stage show and a movie. And though it is a story told with a beginning, a middle, and an end, you might say it's an exercise in how to tell a story without dialogue. There is little to no dialogue in the movie. It's told through music and lyrics and pictures, and you're sort of challenged as an audience to piece it together by yourself. So if you go into it with no background information, you could be forgiven for becoming rather confused and depressed by it all. But hey, it's Pink Floyd. If you came for smiles and sunshine, you did very little research. But I'll do my best to summarize it for you. The Wall is the cinematic lament of a burned-out rock star whose name for the purposes of fiction is Pink. The often catatonic nature of the character does quite deliberately relate to Syd Barrett, the band's founding and former frontman and one of rock and roll's earliest and most tragic acid casualties. But for the most part, this is about Roger Waters. It is basically his autobiography, but without any sort of coherent events. He laments his childhood having lost his father in the war. He laments his adolescence having been treated rather sadistically in school. He laments his relationship with his mother. He laments his relationship with his wife. And he laments having built a wall around all these feelings to try and contain all of this accursed lamenting. Like I said, the whole thing is expressed in the medium of progressive music and pictorial abstraction. But you are given the gist of the ironic long form. The character grows up wanting to know why his father died. He learns about the horror of the Second World War and the sacrifices men made to keep the world safe from power-hungry totalitarian regimes. And then he grows up, and he does the only thing he's good at, getting on stage and shouting semi-audible but inspiring diatribe to lockstepped crowds of impressionable youths. That's the closest he can get to resembling anyone who took part in that war. He can't storm the beach at Normandy, but he can rally a crowd at Nuremberg. And here, friends, is where you can't fail to notice that this is a story about men's issues. Whether you like it or not, whether Roger Waters realised it or not, it's the story of one man's quest to find the cure for fatherlessness in a world that has no interest in treating it. In recorded history, there's scarcely been a generation of girls who had to grow up without their mothers, but this was one of many generations of boys who had to grow up without their fathers. And so often they are left with mothers who don't challenge them, teachers who don't nurture them, and wives who do neither. So they look to the world on an external macro scale to fill their father-shaped hole. And that's when they're in danger of starting a totalitarian regime that causes the deaths of millions of fathers. But the moral of the story is this all happens because of the wall. The psychological barrier you build to help you deal with the world becomes the thing that prevents you from dealing with the world. Every minor imperfection and every major tragedy in your life becomes another brick in the wall. It stops you from crying, then it stops you from stressing, then it stops you from laughing. You don't necessarily put the wall up by yourself. It is to some degree an automatic defense mechanism. It's nature's way of making you not give a shit. But you do necessarily tear the wall down by yourself. Maybe gradually, maybe suddenly, but it's your job. And it happens when you make it happen. But it doesn't mean you start giving a shit. It means you no longer need a wall to help you not give a shit. Discuss!
Wow, that was
Steve
really,
Staff.
really good summary there, Mike.
Yeah.
It's hard to follow up from that. Brian, are you able to bring your usual
What? Cadence?
curious self to the table?
I can bring
Ask a
things in.
question.
We can bring things in, all sorts of things.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about all this is that I think watching it before the show really put things into perspective, because I think up until the point I didn't quite understand what the wall was a metaphor for, and it really is, like Mike said, it's this barrier that we put up. It's not just the mental barrier, it's also this false facade between us, between our actual selves and the self that everyone else gets to look at every single day. And it's something that happens through our experiences. And I think one of the things that really resonates with, I think, a lot of people is you see the situation where they're the kids in this very oppressive classroom, and you see this very graphic scene of children being pushed through the school system with the hopes of producing these perfect citizens that can be used and abused as the system sees fit. And but ultimately they all go into the grinder. They all suffer as a result of this. And this is brought about by our protagonist, you know, feeling the need to express himself, you know, in a way that I guess is unacceptable by the teacher. He decides, you know, hey, I'll try my hand at poetry, but not everybody is good at first when they write poetry. And one of the things that happens when you pursue any craft is you need encouragement to continue to go on and to work hard at what you're doing. But early on, the teacher basically humiliates him in class for even trying, and it just kind of plays into this mindset. It's like, oh, you know, I need to distance myself from anyone else, and I shouldn't be emotional, and I shouldn't show who I really am. And this guy goes through a whole bunch of stuff. He goes without a father, and you see the constant theme throughout are a whole bunch of children who seemingly do not have an identity of their own, but they gravitate towards others because they want that sense of identity. I don't know, that was something that you could see in that scene where he fantasizes that he's a dictator, and I don't know, that's something that just, you know, jumps out at me as aside with the exception of when he's hallucinating the giant judge with the ball sack for face. Like, that's kind of go on, Allison.
Well, I was just gonna say that
You're Allison now, Brian.
No, I was next though. See, I think the sequence of him fantasizing about being a dictator that comes from this idea that people who are abused as children tend to like a lot of people who become these sort of like dictators and fascist leaders often have difficulty in their childhood that sort of drives them in that direction, and that I think that's what he was trying to mirror in that instance. And it's really, it obviously had like a, you know, Nazi-esque appearance, and there was a lot of like judging of other people in the song that played with that scene where, you know, he's like this fascist dictator type. So I think that was the reason for that. That was the only thing I wanted to say. So Allison.
Well, I was gonna can I just comment to that? But I'm not saying that's the only reason for the scene. But what I'm saying is that there's this tendency among the youth, the ones who seem to have gravitated to him, they seem to have the exact same problem, is that they're striving for a sense of identity that they're not able to quite get on their own, and they just sort of gravitate towards a charismatic leader because probably they've suffered a similar fate.
And I'm going to go somewhere completely different because I watched this show a long time ago. I used to listen to it when I was flying across the Atlantic between, I guess, New York and Saudi Arabia. And it was, so I listened to the soundtrack a lot. In fact, I think had it memorized at one point. And I also watched the video, and this was about, like, I guess when I was 15 or 14, that I first watched The Wall. And it really spoke to me because it was one of my obsessions when I was a kid. And when I first watched it, I didn't quite get why he turns from, he gets sick, he gets so apathetic, he withdraws into himself, and then he gets this shot and he goes through this metamorphosis, I guess, and he turns into the dictator, this icon of sociopathic masculinity, and I realized, having watched it again just today, that it's almost like he got lost he lost the last parts of his humanity and then just became a conduit for a threat narrative. There's no personhood there anymore. He was just a locus for a threat narrative, for rallying around a threat narrative and excluding people. And I just found that interesting, that was the end game of all of that. And I mean, if you create a group of people and then you treat them like they're expendable, and they can't articulate their emotions, they're only allowed to act, and you give all these criteria on when is it acceptable to feel pain, when is it acceptable to feel sorrow, and pretty much never. And you make that interior life completely barren. What do you think you're going to get? You're going to get a whole bunch of men defined completely by serving a threat narrative, usually created around the things that they share with their exquisite white mother. So there you go. So that's what I wanted to say. Go ahead, Hannah.
I'm going to take it in yet another different direction, simply because of the change between what filters I saw this through, as I think I was around 18 when I saw it the first time, and the filters I saw it through this time. You know, as a kid, I saw the overprotectiveness of the mother, because being raised as a kid with a health problem that was life-threatening, there were times in my life when my parents were dramatically overprotective. And there were times when I felt like they were dramatically overprotective when they were simply taking reasonable steps to keep my body from killing me. But there were other times when it wasn't really that bad, and they treated it like it was that bad. And I watched some of the same things happen with the main character of the film that I had to fight happening to me as a kid, in that he developed dysfunctional attitudes towards the things that his mother feared, and other women in particular, because she had this competitive attitude toward other women, and there was that fear of other women, and with me it was other things. It was obviously allergens and things like that, and I watched him have to wall himself off emotionally from an aspect of his life because he could not deal with his mother's fears. And when I was a teen, that sort of changed my approach to my own life and my own health in a small way. It made me more adventurous in a small way, not unreasonably or unwisely adventurous like I had been as a child, but enough that I was not unreasonably or unwisely fearful of things that could affect my asthma. And then as an adult, I look back at my own parenting, and I'm looking at the effects of that overprotectiveness on a kid, and I think about the difficulty of being a men's rights activist while raising a son. And I see the same type of potential imposition for different reasons. And it's one of the most invisible pitfalls of parenthood. the potential for burdening your kids with your own prejudices and your own fears. It is so easy to, with the best of intentions, totally wreck your child's ability to ever have functional relationships with other people. And I don't just mean love relationships, I mean business relationships, friendships, anything that you can make a reason to involve yourself regularly with another person. And no parent is exempt from this. It's something that every single one of us faces, because we all develop our own prejudices and our own fears, our own belief systems, that throughout our experiences we observe things, we make judgments, we develop opinions. That's just part of being a human being. And it's part of our job then to realize that we have the capacity to take the wrong lessons that we've taken from our own lives when people hurt us or our loved ones, and to recognize that our jobs as mentors of our kids is to do everything we can to minimize the dysfunction that we pass on from that. And it's a dysfunctional fear that makes "I've got a girlfriend" sound like I've picked up a live hand grenade to hang out with. And a parent that's more concerned with their own feelings would push that fear on the child the way the mother in the film did. A parent invested in her child's welfare will not. But they will recognize that they can't just ignore the danger either. And you have to find a balance where instead of teaching your kid that other people are bad, you teach your kid to make judgments of character regardless of gender, or judgments of character regardless of any other prejudice you might have. If you have ethnic prejudices, if you have wealth prejudices, some people think that all rich people are greedy, or all poor people are lazy. And instead of teaching your child your prejudice, you make that effort to teach your child what you look for in the character of a person before you decide to trust that person with some aspect of your vulnerability shouldn't change based on those superficial characteristics. It should be the same for everybody. And that's one of the things that I've really struggled for. One of my biggest fears as a parent was that I was going to fail at that. So that was one of the things from the movie that really struck home.
Brian.
Yes, Brian, you go. You go.
Yeah, you disappeared into the depths. Come on, Doge.
And then I can go after.
I thought Rachel was going, so I was.
I can go.
Go.
One of the things that I didn't pick up on, I think, with the initial parts that I managed to see when I was a teenager, was the relationship with his wife. I didn't quite pick up because I hadn't seen all of it. I didn't see all the subtle little things that were going on there, because he gets into a relationship. You know, there's a lot of pieces missing from the story, and that's where you sort of have to fill in. And one of them is kind of the relationship with his wife, because you assume that at least at one point it was happy, because he of course married the girl, and you know that he wants to feel a sense of comfort and an emotional intimacy with an individual in the way that he couldn't have with his mother. And what happens is that his wife just drifts away from him and starts having an affair with someone else. And the thing that makes him the catalyst that drives him over the edge is picking up the phone to call her and finding that the guy she's sleeping with picks up the phone. He answers the collect call. And it's just it's just pretty messed up. You watch him slowly just slip, and I think it's that he realizes in that moment that there's nobody else that he can really be emotionally intimate with. There's nobody that can really come close. He really come close to speaking with. But you understood that there was still that wall there between him and that and his wife. It's not something that he's entirely, I don't even know, entirely responsible for. I mean, it's difficult at times to realize when you're really being emotionally distant with someone, when you're dealing with a lot of these problems, especially when you're depressed. You don't always notice that you're doing it. And I know this because I've been in relationships with people when I was in a low point. And I didn't even realize at times what I had done, and where I was at fault. And I think there's a lot of truth to what was taking place there. Surely she shouldn't have been cheating on him. That's messed up. But you understand that these things sort of unraveled as a result of her inability to understand what he was going through, and his inability to really be able to take down that wall between the two of them. It's kind of this muddy murkiness of reality, of real relationships, that is reflected here. And when you're seeing this, the visual representation of this in the animation, it is, of course, incredibly cynical, because from his perspective, she has devoured him. She has taken away his destroyed his dreams, his feelings of, well, the good feelings towards the idea of romance and compassion from another human being. And yeah, it's pretty messed up. Yeah, it did happen. Yeah, Hannah, it did happen with a lot of soldiers with PTSD. That is something. In fact, I would say that this is something that a lot of households suffered from, was when soldiers would come back home and they would be emotionally distant from their wives because they were so changed. There was no way that they could really articulate what had happened, and really express that to their partner. Just a lot of things. There's so many things going on here. Brian, take this from me. I think as more people talk, we'll be able to really unpack this.
Yeah. So I mean, I was just gonna say that I saw it once when I was 16 years old, and I think it was way too early, and I did not know what I was looking at, and it actually scared me in many ways when I saw it, because the imagery was just weird. But when I think about it, I think it's partly because I was a bit on the young side, and also I was a very sheltered as a young man, and I think that I was seeing, some of the things that I had experienced but didn't realize what it was. And now, that I'm older and a different person, I watch it now, and it resonates so well. Especially one of the things that and Mike said this in his written piece about it, whether it is known or was conscious of this or not, there is a recurring theme of, this guy who's basically had a lot of his life shaped by the women in it. His mother and his wife specifically, because his mother was overbearing and overprotective, and it created, probably to compensate for the fact that his father was not present, and I believe he died in the war, or at least that's what they were alluding to. I believe that's the case. And so his mother was very protective of him, and that almost put him in a state of not really, becoming, sort of remaining a child in that way. And, he developed this dependency on his mother even as an adult. So when he married and had his wife, he wanted his wife to fill in that role, that to be his mother sometimes as well. But then he also had some trust issues, because his mother did, start seeing other people, having an affair. I thought she was seeing other people because his father was dead, but she was basically filling in an emptiness, and as a result of that, she didn't need him anymore, to do that. So you have that scene where he's sleeping with his wife, and he imagines himself as a child left in his room and sneaking into his mother's room to sleep with his mother, and they're showing this, it's this Freudian thing that they have going on. And of course, the bit that sort of makes it really plain, which is my favorite part of the film, is the animation. But that's because I'm I like animation, and it has this really surreal quality where the mother appears and she is basically a giant vagina that swallows him, and you can see if you look closely as him as a child in the animation, he grows an umbilical cord that goes up into the vagina, and then she swallows him, and it shows her like rocking him, as she sings about. Essentially, she's talking about him as though he's still this defenseless baby that she wants to protect. And I think that this imagery it repeats this stuff with what these women do in this guy's life and how they affect him even indirectly. Like there's a bit where obviously the wife, she turns into like a scorpion and like a serpent and other creatures, and there's a bit with the schoolmaster, and this is my favorite image in the whole film is the schoolmaster as a cartoon. He's beating this kid with a ruler, and he's hanging from a string like a marionette. But then in the shadows is a woman who's got the schoolmaster, and she's beating him. And the impact of this large woman hitting the schoolmaster is causing him to strike the boy. So it's showing this cycle. And I thought that was just one of the most powerful bits in the film. And that was just really, really something.
Yeah, you said how he mainly looks back on how he's influenced by the women in his life. There's three sort of main antagonists. They each got a giant inflatable in the live show. There were the mother, the wife, and the teacher. And the teacher is the only male among them, but as you said, the teacher himself was just filling this sort of power vacuum caused by his fat and psychopathic wife, who thrashed him within inches of his life.
Yes, because she domineers him at home, so he has to take it out on the kids at school.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
not that he's
again, again, all roads lead to sort of directionless sort of matriarchs, basically.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Okay, Allison, you can go ahead.
Well, I think it's sort of it talks about, because of the way women are in society, or the way the situation that women occupy at the center of society, and generally the arbiters of belonging. I think it speaks to that. And when you're an arbiter of who and who does not belong in a society, you often, I think, a lot of women are completely unaware of that power, and much less aware that they need to use it in a just and civilized manner rather than just as a service to their own emotional whims. So I mean, this seems to be like the whole arc and the whole structure of this story seems to be about being outside of that center that women occupy as people who decide of the belonging of the society and portion it out. So you have women who are portioning out that sense of being part, like being human, to men who have to prove that they're worthy of those portions that they get. And in the process, you get this idea of male expendability. They're not really part of society unless they have something to bring to the table in terms of worth. And that's those scenes. And I thought the flowers were actually his wife. And the arguments and the violence of their relationship, rather than his mother. But I could be wrong about
that. Yeah, they sort of morph in. One morphs into the other, actually.
Well, you're talking about two different scenes. So, like, the flowers that are dancing together, that is the wife and him, like, and they're sort of like, relationship that is affectionate at times, but more like they're at each other's throats more of the time. So they're like beasts that are fighting and fucking, But later, when the trial happens, the mother is shown, she flies out of the wall as like a plane that turns into a giant vagina, and you see the what appears to be like the baby or whatever is represented as Pinky is represented like as a child, and an umbilical cord goes up into the vagina that swallows him and turns into a mother that's rocking him. That's at the end of the film.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha.
That's earlier in the film, and that does represent the husband and wife, because they're kind of like, they fight and they fuck, so it's like, I don't know, it's erotic and violent at the same time.
Yeah, I find it just disturbing, but But what I'm getting at is this idea that the whole sequence, those sequence together, actually just speak to that idea that women have that they are the sense of belonging of society, and men are always peripheral to that. So when he has that intimacy with his wife, he's seeking out that sense of belonging, and because she is the one who controls it, she has immense power over the relationship, and then she just, to be honest, I can understand some of the pressures that she was under. I mean, he was really depressed, really withdrawn into himself, and it's hard. It can be really difficult to be in a relationship with someone like that. Although the implication that him ignoring her sexually was the reason why she left is a little bit, makes me a little less sympathetic.
I didn't. Well, are you saying I suggested it, or that it was suggested in the movie?
I think it was suggested in the movie.
I don't think so. At least I didn't pick up on that.
What specifically?
There was a moment where I think he tried to kind of come over to her, and she sort of like slinked away. I could be wrong.
Oh no, but there was much more elaborate scene where she was getting undressed and trying to entice him sexually, and he was having none of it. I guess the implication there was almost that sense of insult. Like she was insulted by the fact that he was, well, basically very deeply depressed and unable, I would say at that point pretty much unable to respond to her. And then there was the scene where he reaches out to her and she rejects him. And so there's a subtle implication that this had to be on her terms, like the sexual aspect, the intimacy aspect had to be on her terms, which doesn't speak well of her. But
oh no, Brian, it wasn't a groupie. The groupie was the chick who was in the room who, like, when he was trashing it.
Yeah,
it was different.
That was just. I was actually interested in this entire show. There was very little sense that he had a sexual interest in anything. He seemed very asexual, actually. That's something I found interesting. Because usually with the rock and roll. There was something.
Actually, strangely enough, I don't think it's that he was asexual. I think it's just that there's a lot in this show that is. There's a lot of.
Is everyone else getting Robo, Rachel?
I'm getting Robo, Rachel. Yeah.
Okay, Rachel, you're gonna have to stop because your sound is coming through really badly. But
how about now?
Okay, I don't know. Can you try putting your settings down so that it's just your sound, not your video? Maybe that will help. Anyway, so I just wanted to point out that idea of the women being the center of society, which makes men very peripheral and expendable. And then and when he went into that dictator mode, I mean, a threat narrative is really about trying to generate a sense of belonging through violence towards an outgroup. So it's almost like he just lost faith in actually connecting with another human being. Well, his wife. Anyway, Brian.
It's all sort of encompassed in the fucking flowers sequence. Like that's the memory he has of it. We don't see any sort of human-shaped memory of his sex life. It's all it looks like flowers fucking and fighting.
Well, to be honest, I mean, I think that there's a lot of the story that's missing, and where I think we're almost meant to fill it in from the hints here and there, like a lot of the subtle things that end up happening. So we don't know if he was asexual or not. I mean, it's just that I don't think that particularly was relevant to the overall story, so it just wasn't there outside of the flowers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not saying that he was asexual. I'm just saying he was presented as being somewhat asexual. I mean, he didn't really respond to his wife. He didn't really respond to the girl who apparently followed him back to his house or apartment.
Well, there's a big difference between being asexual and having sexual dysfunction as it presents through being depressed. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I know. I thought it was an interesting choice because, you usually have these these idols who are just excessively sexual and aggressively sexual. and it was just an interesting choice to make him so passive and uninterested. I don't know. Anyway.
I mean, he had a devotion, I think, to his wife. At least he felt that, he was being devoted to her, and she betrayed him. And of course, which causes him to sort of lash out and go in. And the whole scene with the neo-Nazis and everything. To me, that seemed to be an extension of the fact that he, all his life, had been used and abused, and all he then knew how to do when he lost his mind was to use and abuse other people. So.
Yeah. I guess, are we at the end of this? Because we seem to have run out of anybody talking.
No. I think Hannah wanted to say something directly related to, did you want to say something about the flowers bit?
Well, I did have something. I'm sitting here trying to unmute, and my computer is trying to bookmark the chat for the podcast instead. So, but what I wanted to mention was that this sort of goes back to the dynamic, the relationship dynamic, and the value dynamic that I keep referring to in various shows, where our society teaches children to value themselves and to value other people differently depending on whether the learning child is a boy or a girl. And going back to the movie on that, not only do you see the little boy being taught not to value himself really at all, that he doesn't matter, and his interests don't matter, and his feelings don't matter, and he needs to keep them to himself and bottle them up instead of exploring the why and how of them, and what he should do about them. He's taught that the most important person in the whole world is his mother, and that women are both gods and devils. Exactly the same thing that feminist teaching expresses about men with respect to women. And this thing of us teaching our daughters that everything is about their feelings, that their whole value is in how other people respond to them and how they feel about that, and that somehow that gives them the right to expect other people's responses to them to bolster their self-image. And we teach boys that their value is only in their impact on other people and their impact on the world, and we cover up the people's responses to them, how that makes them feel and how they view themselves. It creates exactly this type of dysfunctional relationship dynamic, where instead of feeling community with his partner and having a sense of intimacy with his partner, the guy grows up to worship his partner. He grows up worshiping his mother, and he grows up to worship his female partner and not think of himself as an equal part in the relationship. And with her doing the same thing to him, it's almost a guarantee that at some point in their marriage, she's going to crush him. And she's going to feel like he's insufficient because he can't give her what the whole world's response can give her. And it's like we are building dysfunction into all of society's relationships, one child at a time, because we do not teach children that everybody has a measure of inherent value regardless of their effect on the world and regardless of how the world views them, and that we need to respect that inherent value regardless of who they are, and build on it with our actions and our interactions instead of relying on those things to give it to us.
And it's so frustrating, to be perfectly honest, when you realize that the way that relationships are and the way that people are right now, it's this endless cycle of people destroying each other. And certainly not for every relationship, but you have people who, men and women, who fundamentally don't understand each other. They don't understand the differences or how to communicate with one another on equal footing, how to understand what makes us same and what makes us different, and how we benefit each other, how we need each other to some extent. And I'm saying that for general society, not necessarily for intimate relationships, but definitely we're good at different things, and in that way we do need each other. and just watching the endless cycle of certain people just, ripping each other to shreds is so disheartening. And I think we definitely see that in this movie. The actions that were the seeds that were planted in childhood, then moving on to adulthood, with no seeming end in sight.
Oh yeah, there's basically people who use and seek power in order to dominate other people often are acting out of childhood trauma in many cases. And that's, I think, another reason why the fascist imagery in the film was used, because that's almost like his response to that. One of the things, too, that I thought was really great and that really resonated with me was at the end with the trial again, because I think the trial sort of sums all of the experiences up. Everything is happening, and from what I know, it's all going on in his head, and so you have to think that these are the voices of the people in his life that have affected him and himself, and probably what society thinks about him as well. When the judge comes, there is a point in the song where the judge says that the reason why he deserves to be punished is because of what he put his wife and mother through. So essentially still saying that how you affected the women in your life is the reason why you deserve to be punished. Not because of what you may, not for any other reason. And he doesn't sympathize with himself at all. The only, the only way that he does is through, again, his mother, who just wants to keep him a child. And she is a part of that wall that he's built, because she's basically keeping him from becoming more, than he can, becoming a full person, because he's still attached to her. And I thought that was, another bit that I thought was really great when you really look at it. That he was basically harder on himself than probably most people would be, and that's obviously a part of that whole problem, that insulation. He may be insulating himself because he thinks he would hurt someone, like his wife cheating on him. He probably, thinks is his fault, like he did something to her, because he clearly punishes himself for it. In the lyric where the mother comes out, or not the mother, but the wife comes out, and she says, "You should have talked to me, but you didn't." It's almost like saying it's your fault that we didn't fix this, because you could have if you'd have communicated. And I wouldn't have cheated on someone if that were the case. Which is funny, because he's still not putting the blame where it rightly belongs,
Also, she says, have you broken any homes up lately?
Yes.
Have you done anything? Have you been a lady killer? Assuming, basically projecting her kinds of actions onto him.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up stuff. I think one of the most disturbing things is where he's sort of become this baby doll, this sort of this thing that is completely, almost embryo, this thing that's almost completely detached from who he is. It's this mask coming onto his body and taking completely over, and there's nothing that he seemingly can do to rip it down.
Yeah.
It's just, wow. There's so much shit going on in this film. Also, the imagery with the war is kind of very powerful. The wall is not just the metaphorical wall that we put up between us individually as people emotionally. It's also, I think, the illusion of order, the illusion of perhaps that kindness will always be there, because there's always the brutality of humanity to deal with. There's always the capacity for humanity to go to that dark place and to hurt people in ways that are almost immeasurable, and that the sense of order is all an illusion, that it's something that we tell ourselves is really there, that when in reality sometimes it's only a couple steps from there being riots in the streets and complete chaos. That it's and that's really, I think, one of the many things that we're seeing with the expendability of all of the dead soldiers. And he's bathing in the blood while thinking about, or in his mind he's bathing in blood while he's in the pool, while thinking about all of these things. It's almost like a sense of survivor's guilt. Like, why did my father die so that I could live? Why did that have to happen?
Here's a question for you guys. I mean, I looked at the symbolism. A lot of it is really pretty plain to see, and it's really interesting to see how it was realized. But the one thing I'm not clicking, and it might have just been arbitrary, but what's with the hammers? Like, why was that chosen to symbolize both like the iconography on the flags and also for the animation? Do you guys know why hammers were used?
I think it might just be an aesthetic choice, you know, because it's all directed by Gerald Scarfe. It's sort of his magnum opus in many ways. Sort of him and Roger Waters and all the team sort of got together and said, "Here's some stuff we've come up with. Do you like this?" And everyone liked the hammers because they just sort of saw it and thought, "Fuck
No, they
me,
look great."
Yeah, that's what I mean. You look at it and think, "Fuck me, that looks great." And that's why they went with it. That's a lot of this stuff we're reading into it when a lot of it was just not just aesthetic or artistic choices, but compromises between people who really didn't like each other and were trying to get this out.
Oh, yeah. One other thing too is here's another question. I think the hammers were just a good choice artistically. What do you think happened at the end? The judge says tear down the wall. And they do, and it breaks, and then you have a scene of, people what appear to be picking up the pieces. But what becomes of Pinky? Does anyone know, what it represents? Because the judge says, I'm going to, he asked to have the wall torn down, but specifically because he wanted to expose, all of his fears and weaknesses to everyone who knows him. So what becomes of him? How?
Well, specifically it says a sentence here to be exposed before your peers, which isn't necessarily fair. I mean, if fear's in you, then that's what's exposed. But the point is, the wall. That's what the wall does. It hides you from, judgment, I suppose.
Mm.
The judge sentenced him to be judged.
Yes. Yeah. It's sort of difficult to say how sort of self-indulgent the wall is. It's Roger Waters telling us what it's like to be a pedestalized icon loved by millions. Yeah, weirdly, I didn't even start to understand this until I reached 10,000 subs, and now it's all getting a bit weird. But it's sort of important to know that this, when you look at the film, might as well be the story of Hitler. He was a sort of fatherless, mollycoddled head fuck, and if you can make your story Hitler's story, then you're not just pandering to the rich and famous, because any one of us could go on to be Hitler.
This is actually true. Well, I mean, if you think about it, Hitler, I think he actually grew up fatherless, and also by the time I think he was, he was still very young when he lost his mother as well. So I mean, you're entering your 20s, I think, as an orphan, essentially. Like, you've got nobody, and your dreams of being what you wanted to be are down the toilet, and it's just shit.
Well, actually, to go back to what I was talking about belonging, that would generate a rather strong sense or desire to feel a sense of belonging, feel a sense of idolization by perhaps an entire society. And like I said, the threat narrative is basically about trying to get belonging through violence towards an outgroup. So maybe all these fascist movements are just lonely children.
To create a difference between an in-group and an out-group, you need a divider, a partition, a wall, if you will.
Well, you don't need to. Yeah, no, I get where you're going, Mike.
Without a wall, you
can't
have
and some mortar and and a dividing line. Yeah, but I think that's maybe some of what that's about, is just this idea that it creates this hunger for a sense of belonging that only hands can fill.
I would say that it's just, you have a whole bunch of people who are feeling just indescribable pain, and sometimes it manifests in a way where you come to understand everything, and you come to the realization that it's best to just sort of live and let people have individual ideas that are their own, and you let them make their own life choices. And on the other end, sometimes it manifests as being this crazed authoritarian who decides to impose their will upon everybody.
I think I understand the symbolism of the hammers. I think and I can credit Hannah for helping me get along on that route. A hammer can both build a wall and destroy it.
Yes.
So there you go.
In fact, I'd go so far as to say that it can represent those aspects in our character being that way in every way. Not just that wall, but every possible aspect of our lives. The thing that allows us to build up and create and give can also be used to destroy. The very fabric of human connection. And we can use it to build each other up, to tear each other down, to be divisive, to help or to hurt. The tether between all of us can be the best thing that ever happened to us, or the worst thing.
And you know, the interesting thing is that when you're looking at the imagery overall, when he's in this fantasy of himself as a dictator, he's essentially fantasizing that he is, in essence, what his father died trying to fight. Was this mindless authoritarianism that is trying to impose its will upon everyone and everything, and say that their way is the only way. And yet he managed to get there anyway, out of the pain and in his personal experiences.
It's a mindless outrage cult, actually.
Yes.
And it's a mindless outrage cult that's completely defined by what it excludes.
Yes.
And in the process, it becomes so aggressive and so domineering that eventually it requires a sacrifice of men to stop it.
Yes.
And then it starts all over again.
So it's a vicious cycle. It's kind of...
Yeah, it's like a student being beaten by a teacher being beaten by his wife.
Yeah, that's... Yeah.
I don't know. What?
You can't spell culture without cult.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Okay.
That was pretty messed up, though, the bit with the teacher.
Yeah, the spaghetti eyes. Oh God.
No, I mean, it's the fact that he was being abused by his wife, and then taking it out on the students, and that then takes its toll on the students, and then they are bullied and everything like that, and they lose their will to dream and have their own thoughts. And
speaking of losing your will to dream, we have the opportunity, which is closing fast, to actually get a Nerdcast in under an hour.
Okay, fine.
Let's do this shit. Let's do this shit.
Okay. All right. Before we
blend it,
I wanna say, if you guys who are watching this have not seen Pink Floyd's The Wall film, go see it and then make a comment. And if you have, but it's been a really long time, you may have a whole different view, like I did when I saw it recently. I'm blown away by this movie. I wish I'd watched this sooner. Even though I saw it when I was really young, but I was too young. But I was ready now. So if you're ready now, go see it now. I think you can watch it on YouTube, actually.
If your body is ready, do it.
Yes, sweet. I think your body is ready. So
just do it.
We're gonna go ahead and wrap this shit up.
Yep.
Final words.
I will do some final shilling. Nobody will have any further words.
No.
Okay, so shush. Be quiet. Go eat your
Lord.
hands. Go eat your bowl of hands.
Words.
Okay, all right. I'm going to get this in under an hour. So I have plans. If you want to see them happen, I need your help. Donate, patron/Honey Badger Radio. We have another minute and a half. Nope, let's go. Do it. End it.
Okay. I'll see you guys, and thanks for joining us.